Hello, I'm Esther Gidui Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Voters in Eswatini cast their ballots on Friday for legislative elections that are unlikely to change the political scenery in the tightly controlled kingdom. Republican lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives held their first formal impeachment hearing Thursday, arguing that President Joe Biden improperly used his office for the financial benefit of his family. And in our entertainment report, Paris-based Senegalese bassist, vocalist and composer Alune Wade releases new music video, Saba's Journey. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin in southern Africa, where voters in Eswatini queued under the hot sun on Friday morning to cast their ballots in the parliamentary elections. With political parties banned from contesting, what's at stake? VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
More than 580,000 people are registered to vote in the southern African nation of Eswatini, where King Mswati III wields absolute power while enjoying an opulent lifestyle, as nearly 60% of the population lives below the poverty line. Still, Friday's election is drawing interest.
Gives me a better chance, in job opportunities and everything. And then I'll also be confident that I had a hand, in choosing our government.
Voters are to choose 59 members of the lower house of parliament, which plays an advisory role to the monarch. Government officials said the monarch is a tradition and the elections will be fair, but the system will not change, and the king has many supporters.
Because you cannot change, you cannot expect a change if you don't vote.
Formerly known as Swaziland, the mountainous country of 1.2 million people is landlocked between South Africa and Mozambique. King Mswati, 55, ascended to the throne at 18 years and has ruled the country with an iron fist for 37 years. Some critics say there is no point of voting because it's an absolute monarch.
But they are saying there's elections which are free and fair. There's nothing like that. And the world must know that in Swaziland we are living in an absolute monarch. The three arms of government are under one man.
Terrible. I'm telling you the truth. It's terrible. There are no jobs. Our kids aren't working. You see, even if they can study, they get degrees, masters, but they're staying at home. So it's terrible.
Political parties were effectively banned in 1973, but a new constitution in 2005 provided an opening allowing for freedom of association. Still, there are no legal avenues for them to register, according to the democracy watchdog Freedom House.
The purpose of an election, in my view, is to form a government. If you can't form a government, then the elections are meaningless, because you go to a polling station because you want to exercise a right on how you want to be governed. You want to have a say on how you want to be governed.
Amid the poverty, the monarch loves luxury cars and watches. He spends millions of dollars yearly on his 15 wives and at least 25 children. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
President Vladimir Putin hosted South Sudan President Salva Kiir for talks at the Kremlin in Moscow on Thursday. They talked about their bilateral relationship.
Relations between our countries are developing very intensively. We were one of the first countries to recognize the sovereignty and independence of South Sudan. I must say that we believe that much remains to be done, first and foremost in the area of economic development.
And we will work together as the world dictates. Nobody can stand alone, and I cannot do it alone. We are the youngest nation in the world, and we need strong friends. You are one of them, and we don't see any alternative besides you.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and South Sudan President Salva Kiir speaking in Moscow. Now, South Sudan is faced with numerous health challenges, some caused by human conflict and natural disasters like disease outbreaks and climate change. The country is also grappling with hunger and malnutrition, especially among younger children. For more on what's being done to help South Sudanese, I'm joined here in the studio by Joseph Dumba, president of the Kadi Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to improving health in South Sudan. Dr. Dumba, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
Let's start with what you're doing. I understand you run a hospital in the Equatorial State. What are you doing there exactly?
Well, it's not a complete hospital yet. We run a facility. It's a clinic at this time, but we're in the process of building a hospital. And it's basically in a rural area to try to help some of the people who have a very minimal access to medical care in South Sudan.
Okay, what's needed most to support South Sudan's health infrastructure as far as you know?
You know, the problem with South Sudan is that the needs are very vast. And so to start with the health care, I think what we need to do is first actually address the basic needs, which is just basic primary care in the rural areas to address the issues of malaria, malnutrition, diarrhea, asthma, and all those things that are just killing people when they shouldn't be. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to address the primary basic needs of the people in the rural areas. And then after that, we move on to the other secondary needs of the secondary health needs for the people.
So which category of people would you say are impacted most by health issues, and why? Is it the young, the elderly people, or does this really depend on the demographics?
I think it's mostly women and children. And the fact is that children are more vulnerable to diseases, especially dehydration. You know, when they have diarrhea, they are more likely to die from it. And these are things that are very easy to treat. So one of our major projects right now is we're trying to put up a pediatric hospital in the area where our clinic is in order to address the basic needs of the children first. Because the children are leaders of tomorrow, and without them, the country is really doomed. So we have to take care of that. And then the other thing is also women. South Sudan has one of the highest maternal mortality rate, and we're trying to address that issue by providing them with prenatal care and prenatal vitamins and all that that's needed to produce a healthy baby.
You know, a lot of people would like probably just to hear what kind of, support you're giving. How do you rally the South Sudanese diaspora and other people, because you're based here in the U.S., to help support maybe in terms of medication, equipment? What is being done to assist those hospitals?
It's one of my second jobs that I don't get paid for, so I do it out of my heart, and I have a lot of support from my family and friends, and the generosity of the American people, because they've been helping us in terms of raising funds to be able to pay for the incentives for the employees. We have 25 employees at the facility, and they need to be paid to be able to care for the services. But we also have introduced what we call a sustainable system, where the patients have to contribute something small. It's not necessarily 100% free, because a lot of the time people think they don't have anything, but they have a chicken running around that is actually a resource, or they have some G-nuts, or they have some maize that they can actually sell and be able to pay for a medicine that will cure a child that would have actually died. So we're trying to teach them how to be able to take care of themselves, just in case, like in the COVID-19 pandemic, resources dry up.
Doctor, when you talk about resources and helping people understand, maybe there's some basic things you could tell our viewers about just caring about the nutritional needs that may help alleviate some of these, diseases.
Yes, I think the basic need for health is really nutrition. So you have to teach the people to eat right, to be able to grow enough crops to sustain their health, and that is partly a part of the government. Actually, I think the government of South Sudan should be focusing on that to make sure that there is instability in the areas where people cultivate their own crops and be able to feed their families. And then comes in the health, because without health, you really can't grow crops if you're not healthy. So that's where we come in. We come in, we say, you need to be able to grow enough crops to sustain yourself and your family, and we will help you with health needs if that arises.
Doctor, thank you very much for helping out there and for coming to talk to us here in the studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Joseph Dumba is president of the Kadi Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to improving health in South Sudan. In Washington, Diane Feinstein, a long-serving Democratic U.S. Senator from California and gun control advocate who spearheaded the first federal assault weapons ban and documented the CIA's torture of foreign terrorism suspects, has died at 90. Feinstein's office said she died Thursday night at her Washington home. Feinstein was a Washington trailblazer who, among other accomplishments, became the first woman to head the influential Senate Intelligence Committee. Meanwhile, the U.S. federal government is 2 days from a partial shutdown on Friday as a handful of hardline House Republicans refused to support a bipartisan stopgap spending bill meant to give lawmakers more time to negotiate a full-year deal. Now, for more on the looming shutdown and the passing of Senator Feinstein, I'm joined live via Skype from here in Washington, D.C. by VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson. Hello, Catherine. First, talk briefly to us about the legacy of Senator Feinstein.
That's right. Senator Feinstein was almost certainly one of the most important female lawmakers over the last 3 decades. Her influence cannot be underestimated. As you mentioned, she served as the chairperson of the very important Senate Intelligence Committee. She co-authored that key legislation banning assault weapons. She was a voice in the U.S. Senate, influential across multiple areas, and she was an inspiration to female lawmakers, as former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said when she remembered her this morning. Really cannot be underestimated the impact that she had on the U.S. Senate and on the U.S. at large.
Catherine, shifting gears here, now the federal government is just 2 days from being shut down. We don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does happen, what does the shutting down of the federal government really mean, especially when you look at all the federal employees and federal contractors?
That's right. So what that means basically is that the U.S. government shuts down except for the very most essential operations. So you're going to see national parks close. You're going to see visa and passport processing stop. You're going to see all of the administration policy that gets carried out in numerous little ways across federal agencies stop until U.S. lawmakers can reach an agreement about funding priorities. And right now, that really looks like that is not going to be happening. This has happened in the past before. The U.S. government has shut down, sometimes for as little as a day, sometimes for more than a month. But when it does shut down, it really has an impact across the United States.
How would you say the federal government shutting down and employees staying home, some of them, of course, working, essential workers have to be somewhere working. What would that mean really for other people? What are the implications for families and other businesses?
Right. Well, I mean, the U.S. government and U.S. government employees make up a large part of the U.S. workforce. They obviously are not going to get paid, so they can't go grocery shopping. They can't pay their bills. That's an impact on the U.S. economy. They're going to be cutting back on spending just because of the uncertainty of not knowing when they're going to be paid next. So just that broad uncertainty of never knowing. And remember, even if lawmakers do reach a deal and an agreement for a short-term spending bill, that is only for 30 days. That runs out right before the holidays happen here in the United States. That's just more uncertainty to deal with for those federal employees.
And you and I are in that group. Hopefully things will work out. Catherine, thank you very much for your insight into this. Catherine Gibson, VOA congressional correspondent, live for us from here in Washington. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, we transport you across the Sahel with the soothing music of Alune Wade. We'll be right back.
When a mother dies during childbirth, the future dies with her. That's according to a recent report by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It says across the globe, approximately 800 women die each day during childbirth. The chance of a baby reaching their first birthday drops to less than 37% when the mother dies during childbirth, especially for women of African descent. On the next edition of Our Voices, we take a closer look at the maternal and infant mortality rate. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganye. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, Germany's development ministry on Friday pledged $85.9 million in support for the West African Economic Community, ECOWAS, for peace building and economic development. Development Minister Svenja Schulz, who met with an ECOWAS delegation in Berlin on Friday, says, quote, solutions to the crisis in West Africa must come from the region. Jailed Tunisian opposition leader Rachid Ghannouchi and fierce critic of President Kais Saied has begun a 3-day hunger strike in support of other imprisoned opposition figures, according to his Islamist Ennahda party. Ghannouchi, 82, was sentenced to a year in jail in May on charges of incitement and plotting against state security. More than 20 other opposition figures have been detained this year. The International Monetary Fund's Executive Board on Thursday approved a $1.32 billion 18-month loan for Morocco in its new Resilience and Sustainability Facility to help the country bolster its resilience to climate-related disasters, according to a statement from the fund. The North African country had requested funds from the IMF's new trust well before the devastating earthquake that struck Morocco's High Atlas Mountains, killing more than 2,900 people. Republican lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives held their first formal impeachment hearing Thursday, arguing before the American public that President Joe Biden improperly used his office for the financial benefit of his family. But Democrats contend that the inquiry has yet to turn up evidence supporting those claims. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
Republican lawmakers held their first formal impeachment inquiry hearing Thursday, arguing that members of the Biden family benefited from President Joe Biden's time in public office.
For years, President Biden has lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's corrupt business schemes. At least 10 times, Joe Biden lied to the American people that he never spoke to his family about their business dealings. He lied by telling the American people that there was an absolute wall between his official government duties and his personal life.
But Republicans have yet to uncover any hard evidence that President Biden misused his office, and they did not present any new evidence in Thursday's hearing.
They've invited 3 witnesses to testify. Not one of them is an eyewitness to a presidential crime of any kind. Not one of them is a direct fact witness about any of the events related to Ukraine and Burisma. Not one of them has participated in the 8 months of investigation in which our distinguished chairman has publicly boasted that he received 100% of everything he asked for.
Democrats argue that Republicans are investigating Biden to distract from the indictments that encompass 91 criminal charges against former President Donald Trump.
This is all about Donald Trump and his campaign, about supporting him.
Republicans say they are rooting out corruption. A poll conducted by the Associated Press and the Nork Center for Public Affairs Research found that 1 in 3 Americans is highly concerned about whether President Joe Biden may have committed wrongdoing related to his son's business dealings.
Let's get some transparency. Let's follow the rule of law.
Some House Republicans have expressed doubt about the inquiry. saying it does not rise to the standard of removing a president from office for high crimes and misdemeanors. And other Republicans acknowledge any impeachment effort will end in the Democratic majority U.S. Senate.
We have no expectation that the Senate would vote to impeach.
If lawmakers fail to reach an agreement about funding priorities, the U.S. government will shut down on October 1st. And impeachment hearings cannot be held until new funding is passed. Catherine Gibson, VOA News.
More than 100 countries are represented at the World Culture Festival at the National Mall here in Washington, D.C. Organizers say the occasion will celebrate a rich tapestry of cultures from every corner of the globe. The three-day extravaganza kicked off Friday and ends on Sunday. For more on the event, I'm joined live via Skype from where the action is by VOA's Jackson Vunganyi. Jackson, tell us what the festival looks like.
Hello, Esther. So we're here at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Thousands of people from around the world are going to descend at the National Mall to celebrate culture, food, meditation. This is organized by Gurudev Sri Sri, and it will be the 4th edition of what is referred to as the Cultural Olympics, with thousands of artists and other cultural workers descending on the National Mall for a weekend of music, of meditation, of food. It's a festival that aims to celebrate and promote cultural diversity, to foster peace and enhance global harmony through a showcase of cultural performances, through music, through dance and art from various parts of the world. And we spoke to the organizer, Gurudev Sri Sri, and this is what he said.
Meditation, music and meals, that's what we'll be offering. There'll be cuisines from 80 countries around the world. Will be there, music and dance from 180 countries. So, and then we'll have a meditation, we'll have yoga. All these programs I've seen. This is the 4th edition of World Culture Festival. In the past we have had in Delhi, the last one we had in Delhi, we had people from India and Pakistan, Palestine and Israel.
They all come in Delhi to meet.
Everybody came there. And there were 36,600 artists on one stage.
Jackson, what else is happening around you right now?
Again, Esther, this global gathering serves as a point for people from around the world to come together to celebrate cultural diversity and unity. As you can see behind me, the event officially kicks off in a few hours. And so we have dancers, local dancers and cultural workers just doing their rehearsals right now, and they'll be part of the cultural performances. We'll see exhibitions, see meditation and wellness workshops given here by the Art of Living Foundation, which is emphasizing on well-being and stress reduction. And we see other types of peace initiatives that are being promoted by the founder, Gurudev. Back to you.
Go sample some food. I hear that there are all kinds of foods from all parts of the globe. Jackson,
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther.
All right. VOA's Jackson Vunganyi live for us from the National Mall here in Washington, D.C. It's time for Entertainment Report, and joining us now is Heather Maxwell, host of VOA's Music Time in Africa radio program. Hello, Heather.
Hello, Esther. Hello, everyone. I have more jazz to send you off into your weekend. Last week, we had guitarist Constant Boti with us in studio from Côte d'Ivoire. Today, I bring you fresh new music by Paris-based Senegalese bassist, vocalist, and composer Alune Wade. The piece, entitled Saba's Journey and the title track of his 2022 album Sultan, transports us across the Sahel, from West Africa to East, especially Ethiopia, but all in the space of one single studio in Paris, France.
great sounds there. Give us a little more insight into this music.
Okay, well, you know what? This piece is actually a way for Alune to show the African story before the slaves' story. So we spoke on the phone, and he told me, you know, it's about the Queen of Sheba. So what he texted me, I'm going to read here, is that the atmosphere of the song reflects the legend of the Queen of Sheba and her triumphal arrival in front of King Solomon as she leads a huge caravan of precious stones. So legend, folklore, and the sacred texts of the Bible or the Quran all recognize the central role of this woman who in Ethiopian mythology gave birth to Solomon's son, Menelik I. As you know, Esther, and many of you watching, he went on to become the first Ethiopian king of the Solomonic dynasty, and this lineage remained in power for the 3 millennia until Emperor Haile Selassie was deposed in 1974. So that's the story, that's the backstory. Back to you.